Alright, what's going on, guys? It's Rio, and today I'm going to be talking about some 3v3 tips and tricks. So let's get right into it. Now, first, I do want to go over my 3v3 guide and what happened with it. Essentially, I made some videos for it, and they were not super popular and didn't get many views. Mainly because barely anyone plays 3v3 in this game, and the people watching my videos may either play 1v1, or PvE players that enjoy watching PvP, or even some people that don't play the game, but still like to watch, you know. I will put this video on the Ultimate Guide to 3v3 playlist, but overall I'm not going to make more videos for it until they start actually getting interest and views. Lastly, I will say if you do want more 3v3 tips, you can go over the playlist link down below. So now, let's start the actual video. So, first I want to go over how to find like a 3v3 team and get into 3v3 briefly. So, I would recommend either trio screening with 3 accounts, or you can, of course, play with real players. And preferably, if you can play with players that can talk to you in a Discord call for easier communication, that's probably the best. You can also dual screen and then have a single screener. So I have like 2 people with 1 person dual screening. You can find people in game and on Discord who already do 1v1s. Maybe invite them to do a 3v3 with you. Try to, make a 3v3 team. Sadly, at the moment, this game is pretty dead, and it might be pretty hard to find people who actively play and want to play, but you can at least try. Also, if you ever want a match, I'm almost always down for matches unless I'm busy, so feel free to leave your Discord in the comment section, and I can add you to schedule a 3v3. Now let's get into more of the tips, like in-game tips section. So, first, I want to go over some basic tips about early game, mid game, and late game. So, I'm going to classify the 2 types of teams play styles as like there's the combo based play style, usually the Witch Doctor, trying to play for early game combos for cheap kills and usually playing pretty defensively. And then you have the team that usually has like a Swashbuckler or Buccaneer that's trying to play more aggressively and rush a bit. So let's call this combo team and aggro team, just to make it clear, since some tips may apply to one play style and not the other. I do want to say that having a play style in mind for your matches can be good, because you might make different moves and have a different win condition based on what kind of play style you're trying to go for. Personally, I usually like the Witch Doctor combo playstyle, although recently I have been playing a bit more aggressively with either like hybrid melee musket or swashbuckler, or even using Witch Doctor or double musket super aggressively. So early game, if you're a combo team, your goal should be trying to make the early game take as long as possible and to get as many of your infinite range hits off as possible before it gets into more direct contact like companion war style of mid game, since your infinite range hits are literally just free damage when no one else is really able to do damage back to you. So you have the advantage early game, so you want to take advantage of that. You try to use auto slows, barricades, musket lines, other things to your advantage early game to keep it last as long as possible. For a more aggro team fighting a more combo based team, so if you're like an aggro team and you're fighting like a witch team, you want early game to end as early as possible and go into mid game without taking as much free, like you want to take as minimal free casualties and damage early game from like Mornsong and bomb spam. You want to get into that mid game. Try to move up a lot. Try to bring maybe you could try bringing some high movement chargers like Nausicaa's, Goros, Flanders, Contessa's, to try to force early map control and starting the companion fight early with like maybe your chargers, because usually once the companions start going at it, that's really when it signifies the mid game is starting. Don't be scared to force some units to be able to play really aggressively, such as forwarding your musket pirate for bomb spam, maybe forwarding some Nausicaa's to start attacking units early. Overall, early game really just depends on your play style and what you want to do for how you play early game. So yeah, it's kind of situational, and yeah. So now I want to go on to some tips for mid game. Now, something that should be pretty obvious, but something that people don't always focus on, is like trading units and trading damage. So try to think ahead about what will happen if you make a certain move, i.e. send a certain unit send your musket line up, stuff like that, and then think, what can my opponent do? Can my opponent kill this unit? Can my opponent, what units are in range if I do this move, right? Try to think, what can your opponent do? What units or damage your opponent can get off if you do a certain move? Another thing is for one companion trades, sometimes can be good and sometimes bad. Now, overall, sometimes you just get a 1-for-1 trade. It's pretty neutral. It's like you trade a Nausicaa for a Nausicaa. You know, you're just down a Nausicaa, right? You might think of that as neutral, but if, for example, let's say you're up by 2 units, maybe getting a 1-for-1 trade is just setting up for the end game for you to have more units. So if you have 2 units above them and then you keep getting 1-for-1 trades, you're setting yourself up to have 2 free units in end game. So maybe that is what you want to go for. But to be honest, sometimes that could end up being bad. Like, let's say you're down units and you get a 1-for-1 trade, and it's setting you up for a disadvantageous end game, you know? So I feel like it kind of just depends. But you also could make the argument that if you're down on units, at least getting a 1-for-1 trade means you're not going to go down another unit. So there's sometimes where you're kind of forced into a trade. Like, you have a hidden contest in their backlines. Like, if you don't try to get the trade, she's just going to, like, die, or you're just going to waste the hide and everything. So you're kind of just forced to try to get the trade on a unit. So yeah, but set yourself up for those trades if you want them, and just try to think proactively about, you know, what units you will be able to trade. Is the trade going to be worth it? What am I going to gain? Am I going to gain map control, a unit advantage, this and that? Just think about that, because to be honest, there's less differences in mid game depending on playstyle, unlike early game. Since the mid game, the main goal is like killing as many units and dropping as many companions while losing as little for endgame. So like ideally for endgame, you know, you want to have some companions alive over them to just be able to get free damage. So the thing is, like, for a combo play style, and more specifically like a witch doctor team who's fighting a team like, let's say for example, a swashbuckler instead of a witch, the swash team is gonna have the advantage in endgame, since swash is just better than a witch in endgame, and witch is literally the worst endgame class, right? So the witch team might try to prolong the mid game, play defensively, forcing the opponents to maybe recklessly charge and not get good trades, since sometimes I've noticed that oftentimes charging can end up in a bad trade for the charging team, since oftentimes you cannot send every single last unit in and end up having some units straggling behind, not supporting the chargers, and then the chargers are just getting focused down by like an entire musket line or a big group of units and dying without other units being able to capitalize off of the disarray that they're in, if that makes sense. So if you play smart in mid game as a witch team, you can set up your end game to have some nice companions left alive, because to be honest, having that mid game take longer and being able to get like your AoEs off and all that, because here's what I'm gonna say, like witch doctors and musketeers, they have a lot of like AoE hits which are really good for killing companions. But then in end game, when most of like it's just like 3 forwarded pirates who are not even grouped up, and you're like getting 200 damage off per Mojo Storm and like just crazy stuff like that, your hits are not getting that much value, you know? So if you're able to get a lot of those, you know, mid-game hits off, because you kind of have, you know, different types of hits, but the thing is, for like a melee class, you're kind of, your assassins, your poisons, all that stuff, it can kind of be used mid-game, end-game, whatever, you're going to get pretty good value no matter what. So, as a more aggro team, fighting a witch team, to be honest, trying to get even trades for when you can, for the most part, is pretty good, because if you are able to have a fair like 3 pirates versus 3 pirates endgame without any companions on either side left alive, you have a lot better endgame potential than witch doctor, and will definitely win a lot more of the time during endgame. So being able to end the mid game quickly as a, you know, as a aggro team and killing all their units is super good way to set up for an end game win. As a more aggro team, just simply try to play mid game smartly, but also try to make it take shorter, which will oftentimes benefit you. And for a witch team, vice versa, since you have a witch and musket, like I already said, with a bunch of AoE multi-hits, you know, if their end game, if the mid game ends really quickly, they barely get any of their hits off, and then they're stuck in end game with hits that are not going to do much to single targets. So yeah, overall in mid game, you should also try to focus on the companions, and of course the early game as well. But like in mid game, unless you have a golden opportunity to like pretty much guaranteed kill a pirate and kill them in like a bad enough spot to where it can probably decide the match right there, and they won't be able to revive their pirate, then you should just try to focus on companions. Because for the most part, if you kill a companion, they cannot get revived and live. If you kill a pirate, they can still get back up and live, right? Focus on ensuring kills with solid hits. Focus damage on units. Don't spread your damage. Overall, those are some of the mid-game tips. Now for the end-game tips. In endgame, for the most part, it's just the pirates alive with maybe a few companions. Now, in the endgame, you need to look at you need to like overall assess your situation. Try to look at like positioning, resources left, pirate classes. You know, maybe you have the class advantage, disadvantage. That stuff to decide if you're going to try to play more of a slow-paced, safe endgame, where you keep your pirates always protected and healthy and slowly chip down the enemy pirates. And this can work if you have more resources, to where if you play it right and you play it slowly, you can kill them when their shields and heals run out and you maybe have them. Or maybe you have a class advantage, like a swashbuckler who can slowly poison them down. They have something like a witch doctor who really sucks in endgame, especially the longer it goes. Because let me tell you, the longer it goes, the worse hits you have in your witch doctor, and it's just like horrible, to be honest. So you kind of, ideally as a witch doctor team in mid game, it's better if you can at least like try to decide the match in mid game and have enough computers left alive to where end game won't really matter and you've pretty much already won. Or just kill the pirate who doesn't even go to end game, right? So if you don't feel like you have the advantage, right, like I already mentioned, then you might try to play a bit more aggressively and take risks. Go for pirate kills when it's a bit riskier. Maybe try to do moves that can quickly decide the match. Not make it last much longer. As a witch team, ideally you want to either win decisively in mid game, or you want your end game to try to probably kill them as quickly as possible, unless they're really low like on resources. So either if you do not win the mid game as a witch doctor, you kind of gotta try to kill them quickly as you can in end game. So really, it's a balance. It's super based on context for what you try to do. On like whether it's a better idea to, you know, go for a kill, to go for a safer option, to go for a not safer option. End game is pretty contextualized, but just focus on keeping your units, like keeping your pirates alive. You know, make sure they all have shields when they need them and keep them healed. Just watch out for opportunities that your opponent might be able to one-shot your pirate, one-shot one of your pirates, and also look out for opportunities where you can probably one-shot one of their pirates, because oftentimes if one of the pirates dies, it's usually gonna go in the favor of that team most of the time. It can usually be pretty deciding. So overall, these are some tips for 3v3 on this video. If this was more of like a generalized video, if you want to go more in depth, go check out the ultimate guide to 3v3. It's linked in the description. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. I appreciate you guys for watching, and peace.